In life, we go through a lot of things. And if you're not tough mentally, you can give up on life very easily. This is Now Tell Us. I'm your host, Anthony Murore. And our topic today is your toughness, your mental toughness will save your life one day. Now, this is a story that is going to be shared by one of our guests today, or our guest today. As always, at Now Tell Us, we have guests come and tell us stories. They come and inspire us. They come and educate us on a subject. And every single time that we've had guests here, we've had a wonderful time. And today promises to be just that, a wonderful time. Because we have a great guest who is known as Jerry Scarlato, and he's going to be here shortly. But before he comes, let me remind you, please, to share this episode with all your friends. If you have a question about our episode or about how you can have some mental toughness, please ask it and Jerry will tell us. Or any other comment that you have to make about our podcast, we appreciate every feedback. And so we thank you in advance. And now, I don't want to take one more minute because Jerry has a lot to tell us. So why don't you join me as we go together to meet our special guest today, Jerry Scalato. Here we go. Hi, Jerry.
Anthony, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. You set some high standards on that intro. I'm looking forward to filling them.
Yes, and I believe we are going to have a great time. I believe that with Jerry with us here, then we've got much to hear and work on our mental toughness.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm just curious, and just before we get started, because it's like our image has gotten affected somehow. Can you maybe check on the settings and check that our video is on high definition?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Yeah, let's take a
Looks
look to get
looks like it.
things. It's on high definition.
It looks like it is.
Okay. I'll give you as we are waiting to prepare people's. Now, let me see. Is it going to work that way? Yeah, as we are waiting to prepare people mentally, I would wait for you to refresh that page and then come back, and I believe it's going to be improved. Uh, this is what you go through in life. Sometimes you get things going smoothly, other times you get things giving you a challenge, but you've got to be tough. So, refresh your page and come back as we keep going. So, I'm talking to every one of you. Please, if you're there, tell us where you are at, and we'll appreciate you. Let us hear you, let us see you, and as we get going with Jerry here, shining as bright as he is,
Any better? Hmm.
yeah, it's kind of improved, but it's playing with us now.
Hmm.
It's playing with us. Why? Why does it choose to
Interesting.
just, just prove that what
Technology.
we are? Yeah. Why does it want us to prove to it that what we are saying today is what we mean? That we got to be tough.
You know,
I want
these
to know.
are first world problems, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
are.
yeah.
They are first world problems. Who knows? It's telling me on my end we got HD going on, so that's interesting.
Yeah, but, on my side, your signal is showing as a weak signal,
Hmm.
but that was not how it was when we were starting.
Before we started,
Yeah, before we started, it wasn't as
yeah,
now it's in yellow, so
yellow's
it's yellow.
Yellow's better than red, I guess.
Yeah, it's better than red. So I don't know. Do we just keep going or do we? Oh, I thought it's gonna be refreshed.
Yeah, you look good
Um,
on my side, so I don't know.
Yeah, and because I know we have people who are watching us, how is Jerry appearing on your end? Is he now? I think he's improved. It's kind of improved
Yeah, maybe you just got to
somehow.
talk it into existence, manifest the clarity into existence.
Yeah, manifest clarity into existence. Do we have people who are watching us, and you can tell us how Jerry is appearing on your end? Because from my end, the
Yeah, it's
image
funny. I looked, of course,
let
on
me.
my end, it makes sense that I guess I would look nice and clear, but
Yeah, we always now. It's not so badly off. We can. I think we can get going. When I look at it from the other. Okay, so we've got some feedback here. Let's see. Moraya Mwangi says that the signal is okay. So we are going to go with that. So we have Moraya Mwangi watching us. Thank you, Moraya, for watching us and
yeah,
confirming
thanks.
the signal
Thanks
is
for the
okay.
feedback.
Yes, and actually your image has improved to some extent. Let me believe that it's gonna get better as we get going, and it's a good lessons. It's a good lesson for each and every person we don't usually have it this way.
Well, we already had a hiccup before we even got started. I had to download Chrome and we had to switch platforms, so we got that started, and then here we are, with this. It's funny. Last week I was on a podcast
Yeah.
that had the same issues. So technology,
Now you're looking crisp clear,
crisp and clear. There we go.
so
See, just
so
had
we
to
can
talk
get
it
going.
into existence.
Yes, we did. Okay, now let's welcome Jerry and find out where in the world he is, where we don't have a good signal.
you know, I'm in Cincinnati in the middle of the United States, so you'd think I'd have like a perfect signal, but you know, the Midwest, I don't, maybe it's the weather. It's overcast, so maybe that's what's killing the signal out here. But yeah, out here in the Midwest, the saying is, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes because it's going to change. So, you just kind of have to smile and go with it. But yeah, that's where I am. That's what's going on here. And that's, you know, you get all the seasons in the Midwest. So that's the beautiful thing about it.
That's a good one. I haven't had that before. So if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes.
Wait 5 minutes. I'm from Baton Rouge, and it's the complete opposite there.
Hmm.
So in Baton Rouge, it's hot and steamy almost year round. So um, if you wait 5 minutes, it's just gonna be hot and steamy still.
Okay. Coming to our topic today, is 5 minutes going to save us the trouble? I don't know.
Hey, we
Of
waited 5 minutes to get clarity around here.
yeah,
So
of of other areas in life. Now that we are talking about mental toughness, so your mental toughness, hey, each and every one of you who's watching us, your mental toughness is gonna save your life one day. And I know we have a good story to hear from Jerry. Just stay there, please. Ask questions, comment. We love comments. And let's get going. You said that you were not originally from Cincinnati. Where you mentioned a word that is not so easy for me to pronounce.
originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yep.
Okay, so tell us how is it how it was when you were growing up and the experiences you had there.
Um, when I was growing up in Baton Rouge, I was there until I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And in Baton Rouge, I was a minority, which is unusual for a white guy, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
was a minority. And I look back on that and I bring that up for a reason because we're talking about mental toughness. And I think
Yes.
part of mental toughness is being able to just see a person as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not mental toughness, but it's just mental stability, right? To be able to person on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And I think that experience, me growing up in a school, in a system where I was the minority, gave
Mm-hmm.
to be able to just say, "Oh, I'm just one of everybody else," right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I moved to a city called Fort Thomas, Kentucky, and if you can visualize like a football town, it's a very football town. Everybody went to the high school, all the guys, most of them played football, and it was a bunch of white people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was shocking to me to go and all of a sudden it's 95% white people, whereas where I was, it was not the complete opposite, but it was probably 60-40.
Mm-hmm.
So that was shocking to me. So I get there and it was kind of weird to be in that environment for me where all of a sudden I was not surrounded by a diverse group of group of ethnicities.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually a shock to me. So I actually had to adapt the opposite of what a lot of people in the Midwest would typically do if they went, say, the opposite way and they went down south. So I again, I bring that up because I believe so much that human beings are just human beings. It doesn't matter if you're from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, if you're from somewhere in Europe, if you're from somewhere in South Africa, it does not matter where you're from. A human
Mm-hmm.
being is a human being. And I
Yeah.
believe you have to put yourself in the context. You have to put yourself in different uh, areas and different environments to be able to build that mentality and to be able to actually understand different perspectives so
Mm-hmm.
that you could have that mental stability to be able to communicate with somebody and not judge them because they don't have your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to put yourself in their context and
Yeah.
put yourself into where they are in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that helped me a lot in the beginning, being able to grow up in an environment where I was surrounded by a diverse group of people, not only colors, but demographics in general. Some of them were real
Mm-hmm.
poor, some of them were way on the other end of the spectrum. So whenever you have that in your life, you just build a different mental outlook on life. And I think that
Mm.
helped me a lot.
Oh, well, you have different experiences. So and someone said that whatever happens to me does not actually happen to me, it happens for me. And I believe
Mm,
that's kind of the perspective that maybe you have in hindsight, looking back
mm,
and through the experiences that you went through, growing in a minority area and then coming into another place where you are blending in and you're okay with that.
mhm.
uh, and how and then at what point did you transfer? Was it in high school or is still in
That would have been, I guess, middle school,
middle
7th
school?
grade or something like that. Yeah, right
Okay.
around middle school. And
Mm-hmm.
then went through middle school, high school, all of that was good. And I was a good athlete going through school. Student was okay, good enough. I got through. But looking back again, speaking of hindsight, there were some areas of mental toughness that I was missing going through high school and in college because I played football in college as well.
Mm-hmm.
And being a decent athlete, I was already a good athlete. Being a decent athlete, there were times where I would just try and protect myself from not having to be challenged by somebody
Mm-hmm.
else who was also a good athlete. So I would protect my ego by having an injury or having something come up where I didn't have to or I didn't have to be in that challenge,
Mm-hmm.
where I could just protect myself and say, well, I'm still good enough. I don't have to prove myself to them, or I don't have to go up against them and potentially lose and hurt my ego.
Mm-hmm.
So I was missing a bit of mental toughness when I was in high school and in college. And it wasn't until I was probably in my late 20s where I started to realize that deficit, where I didn't have the mental resilience in my early 20s and late teens to overcome challenges, to
Mm-hmm.
overcome challenging situations and overcome challenging people for that matter, people who I
Mm-hmm.
thought were as good or better than me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started actually thinking about mental toughness. I don't think I called it mental toughness then, but it was just like, hey, what's going on in my mind? Why am I sidestepping these experiences that are going to make me better? They're going to make me better, but
Mm-hmm.
why am I sidestepping them? And what I came up with or what it came down to was, again, I was just trying to protect my ego. I was trying to protect who I believed that I was because I wrapped my identity around being athletic. And so if
Mm-hmm.
someone was going to beat me, then they were beating my identity. They were beating me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So as I slowly started to detach those things and pull my identity away from being something and more toward having abilities, like being able to grow into abilities.
Mm-hmm.
I slowly started to meld that mental toughness and cultivate that mental toughness. So
Mm.
I think attaching your identity to a point in your life where you say, "Hey, I am an athlete," and once that goes away, because eventually it'll go away for all of us.
Mm.
When that goes away, your identity goes with it. That's a hard thing to overcome, and that's why it's worth cultivating your mind in a different way.
Wow. So you don't depend on what it is that you are at that time, an athlete, which you
Mm,
eventually fade away. Now, I would like us to dwell a bit longer on that period of your life. And there's a reason for this because all of us, I mean, we grown up people could have gone through some challenges that we overcame, and we are at this level that we are right now. But it happens that there's someone who's listening who could be at that stage, and even more to that, there could be some parents who are watching this, and they have young children and school going uh, children. And as we know, life these days is not as easy as, I mean, it has not always been, it has never been easy, as so to say. But then there are a lot of challenges in the present day world. And looking back, can you speak to that person who is going through middle school and joining high school and the challenges that you could have gone through, and speak to that person for someone who's listening, then they could gain some insights from that.
it's worth whenever you feel yourself defining who you are by the things that you have accomplished in life, it is worth asking yourself, is that all that I am? Is that all that I am? Is the things
Hmm.
that I've accomplished? For instance, if someone is a good athlete in high school, or they're in the band and they're
Mm,
a good flute player or a good trumpet player, or they're on the track team and they're a good sprinter, or they're on the basketball team and they're a good basketball player. Is your identity only that you are a good basketball player or a good football player? Is that
mm,
all that you want to believe of yourself? Or is your identity the person who can become a better a better
mm,
basketball player, a person who can build into a better basketball player, who can build into a better football player, who can build into a better student? Is your identity more wrapped in the ability to have self-confidence, the ability to have self-worth, the ability to know that you are capable and worthy of more than just the sport that you happen to play?
mm,
Because it's in the abilities and the skills that you will have a future. It's not in
mhm,
the sport. It's in the skills. It's in the skill to want to grow.
mhm.
That's a skill. To want to grow, to want to be
Yeah.
better, to want to be more knowledgeable, to want to have more wisdom. That's a skill. That's an ability to have. To
Mm,
problem solve. Problem solving is another
mhm,
skill you have to build. Creativity is another skill you have to build. And those are the things that are going to create a future, not
mhm,
the sport that you're currently in, but they will support the sport that you're currently in, or the student that you currently are. They'll support those things, but they'll
mhm,
also build the person you'll be in the future. Those skills and abilities will never leave you. Once you
mhm,
have them, they're yours. You get to keep them forever. And that's what will create you in the future. That's what will create that success that you want in the future, or that career that you want in the future, or that business that you want in the future. It's the skills and the abilities that you have as a human being, no matter if you're 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old. It's the skills that you have that will
mm,
create that person in the future. So if you want to tie your identity to something, tie it to the skills that you're building as a human.
mm. As a young person growing up, what part did your family play? Well,
Mm.
and through the challenges that you could have been going through at that time, what part did the family? play or did not play that you can look back and say, hey, you did this or you could have done this?
Mm. Um, my family was very supportive. I have 2 sisters, an older sister and a younger sister. Neither one of them was super excited about, they'd come to games and that kind of thing. My mom and dad, on the other hand, they were supportive. They were at all, if not most games, and my dad would come to most practices, even and watch most practices. Now, my dad, he expected a lot out of me as far as sports goes. As far as school goes
Mm,
too, he expected enough out of school, but he expected more out of sports. He wanted me to be a good football player, be a good athlete, and because he expected a lot out of me, the story that I told myself then, which was just the story that I told myself then, the story I
mm,
told myself was that I had a hard time making him happy because he just wanted me to be better. Hey, you can
mm,
do this better next time. Hey, you can do that better next time. Hey, you can do this. And what I didn't see were the things that he was saying about how well I was actually doing. It felt
mm,
like it was always, hey, you can do better. Hey, you need to improve, instead of also the things that I have that I had done well. And
mm,
this is going back to me attaching to this the sport itself. And this is where it kind of got dangerous, and not dangerous in a bad way, but just as far as lacking a little bit of self-confidence there,
mm,
because it felt like sometimes that I was not able to fulfill his expectations of who I was as a football player.
mhm,
Not because, again, in hindsight, I know for sure that he loved and cared about me,
mm,
but because his expectations were high and he was always pushing me to get better. Hey, you can do this better. You can do that better. Because of that,
mm,
it felt like there was always a gap there. There was always a gap between where I was and him being happy with who I was.
mm.
So,
So there, yeah.
so that gap I let eat at me, if you will.
Mm,
And
that
that's what kind of held me back from, like I said in the beginning of this, protecting my ego, not wanting to be challenged. That's partly why I would step back from those things, to try and protect myself.
protecting yourself. What were your best was your best time in school that you look back and say, oh, that was the best time of my life that I had when I was in school?
The best time that I had.
Hmm.
Oh, let's think. Well, so I actually enjoyed track and field more than I enjoyed football. I played football in college.
Okay.
Uh, I ran track in high school, and I also played basketball in high school.
Hmm.
And honestly, a lot of my good memories come from track meets, even football games and basketball games and things like that. But um, being on the track was always tons of fun.
Hmm.
I ran relays when I ran track. For anybody who doesn't know what a relay is in track, it's when you hand a baton off to the next person, and then
Yeah.
they run and then hand the baton off and so on. So that's mostly what I did, and it was always tons of fun because you got to run with your buddies, and then you were running a course against however many teams. We went to state every year, and that was always tons of fun. So those were the times when I really built, I would say, those strong relationships with people. Whenever you do things with a group of people and you accomplish things with people, is when you start to build and cultivate strong relationships in life. And that's where I built a lot of strong relationships, was in those times whenever we were working hard and we were trying to get better in practice, and whenever we would go out at a meet and go and run and win and those kinds of things. So those were probably some of the best times, was just being out on the track and running around the track, as goofy as it sounds.
And it doesn't, it's not sounding goofy. It's actually something that you said that is very important in life. And when I asked you about your parents and the part they played in your life, and then now you mentioned working with a group of people and what you can accomplish together, using the example of a relay. That's a
Mm,
good one. That's a good thing in life,
mhm,
because even in building our own mental toughness, we can just do up to some extent. But then when we have people who are supporting us in the direction
mm,
that we are going, then that's a very big plus in our own life. Because when you face a challenge alone, it's not as the same as facing a challenge with other people working together
mm.
as a team, either as a family or as a as work colleagues or as uh, teammates in a game that you're playing.
Mhm.
It's a good thing working together. Wow, wow. Um,
That is good. That is so true.
yeah.
If I can support that just
Hmm.
for 1 second. Um, so last year, and we haven't even talked about this, and we don't need to dive too deep into it, but last year I got divorced and closed a business in the same year.
Hmm.
So during that time, my tendency when I start to go through struggles, when I start to
Hmm.
have to overcome obstacles, my tendency is to go inward and to just be by myself. And when I do
Hmm.
that, then I start to get in my own head. And I know that I find more peace when I get around people. To support your point that when you're trying to overcome obstacles, when you're trying to overcome things in life, whenever you are around people that support you the way that is in a healthy way, it becomes much more sustainable to actually overcome hard times. Things like getting divorced, things like closing a business, and even simple things that you might be struggling with in life. Whenever you're with somebody who supports you in a healthy way and you can talk to somebody else, that is becomes a much more sustainable way than you just being in your own head. And that's what I had a hard time with is last year. A lot of times I was in my own head telling myself stories about things, and that's where I cultivated honestly a lot of my mental toughness was through that. So
Wow.
that's
So you went through a divorce and closing a business at the same year.
yeah, same year.
Tell us a bit more
All
about some details about it. How is it
it's
troubles come in droves? Is that how
well,
they say? Yeah.
when it rains, it pours. Yeah, I think that's the saying, right?
Mm,
So uh, they were both. I was married for 10 years, and I was in business for 10 years. So they both started the same year and ended the same year. Now, of course, I know it's almost like a story, right?
mm,
It was not planned out that way. Naturally, it just
mm,
so happened that's just how it worked out. The separation started before the business started to close. When we got separated, I was still operating the business. Everything was still good. And then these things just started adding up. These things started stacking on top of each other. We had one of our coaches quit. I owned a fitness studio. One of our coaches quit, so I needed to replace her. When we replaced her, that one wanted to quit a month later. And then we had a couple of other things go wrong. Another coach was like having troubles. We had a bunch of members leave whenever I separated from my wife because they knew her well. So we had a bunch because of that. And then it also caused this other ruckus between our members because they weren't unhappy with what was going on, not because I was treating her bad, but just because we were separated.
mm,
So there was a lot of strife that started happening in the business, and that's where I kind of had this feeling like I think it's just time to move on. And I think it's time to go to the next thing.
mhm,
So whenever I actually decided to close the business, I just had this calmness about me, this feeling that it felt like the right thing to do and
mhm,
it felt like the necessary thing to do. And whenever I thought about it and my body relaxed, that's when I knew it was the right step to take. because I had
Mm-hmm.
never, let me rephrase that. I had had the feeling or the idea of closing the business before, but being a business owner, I think most business owners think that at least once a week because it's just out of frustration, right?
Yeah.
Something's not going right. Employees aren't, yeah, aren't lining up. Things just aren't lining up. And it had never actually realistically crossed my mind. But this
Mm-hmm.
time, my body just relaxed and my mind just relaxed and my energy just went nice and even. And when I felt that, I was like, yeah, that's, it's time. It's time to do something different.
Mm.
So I literally built a wall between my previous 10 years and the future and just turned and went to the future. So,
Now,
but there was a lot of ups and downs during that time.
now, when you decide to close your business, did you
Mhm.
have something to fall back on, or you just said, called it quits, and then you were there
That
floating?
was about it. It was literally stop and move in a different direction. Now I'm building an online business, and
Mm-hmm.
I have never tinkered an online business outside of when we were shut down for the fitness studio for 3 months, like the rest of the world was. We did some online classes, but we did it for our members, so it's not like we
Mm-hmm.
were trying to grow that. So I've never done online business. I've never done any e-commerce. I've never done any online coaching. I've never done anything like that. So literally I'm going from brick and mortar, owning and operating a brick and mortar business to growing an online business. Literally just a separation and then moving in the other direction. So it's like I said, it's been tough, but the things that I've learned through it, I think will come out in spades over the next 10 years as I develop into the next season of my life.
Mm.
So it's going to be an interesting next 10 years. I know that much, but I've learned a lot over these last 6 months that will help me significantly moving forward. And like I said, it's been a lot of it has just been what's going on upstairs and how much mental resilience I've been able to develop over the last 6 months because of the ups and downs that have happened. So, you got to go through the fire to be able to actually build that mental toughness sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because when it's easy, you think you have it until something bad happens. When it's
Mm.
easy, you think you have it until something bad happens. There's a saying, you don't rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training.
Mm.
And
You
that's,
don't. Okay.
yeah,
Say that again,
that
please.
you don't rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training. So, as I started to go through the divorce and closing the business, my expectations were that I was mentally ready and mentally prepared and that it wouldn't overly stress me. I expected some ebbs and flows, but I didn't expect what I got. What I got was, hey, sometimes everything was okay, and other times I was like, oh my gosh, I just want to be curled up in a ball in the corner and everywhere in between. And I wasn't ready
Mm.
for that. I expected to be ready, but I wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
So during that time, I had a lot of mental training that I had to do. And honestly, life felt out of control. And the best thing that I did to control my sanity was focus on my daily just life development process.
Mm-hmm.
Get
Which
up,
is.
exercise every day,
Mm-hmm.
get up, read in the morning, go for a walk at noon after lunch, and then go for a hike at night. And that's what I did for 6 months because I knew that's what I could control.
Mm-hmm.
I could control the stuff, the actions that I did throughout the day. That's what I could control.
Mm. So
Everything else,
did you get
go ahead.
any professional help, or you believed in yourself going through it?
I've had a coach now for At least one. I have two coaches now. One's a business coach and one's a life coach. My life coach, I've known him for 15 years, but he's been my coach now for maybe 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
So he was there for me a lot to help be able to talk to and talk me through things. And that's again been super helpful. And that goes back to what we talked about not too long ago in having people there to be able to talk to. That's one of the powers of having a coach, no matter if you're talking about a trainer in your fitness or a life coach to talk to or a therapist to talk to whenever you're going through hard times. We're only one human being and you have blind spots whether you know it or not. So
Mm-hmm.
when you have someone to talk to, it just allows you to be able to see your blind spots and to learn from your blind spots
Mm.
because
Now,
otherwise you're just going to keep getting in your own way.
yeah. And let me ask this question, and you don't have to answer it, but then I'm curious. What might have caused the breakup?
So my belief is so I'm the one that started the separation.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, for the last couple of years, we had a hard time being eye to eye, and we had a hard time living a very steady life. Sometimes we would be okay, but then sometimes we would just not get along at all. And that happened on and off for about 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually about 6, maybe 9 months before the separation started, I started just paying attention to our congruency, how well we were actually getting along on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like we had these core values that just kept bumping heads against each other. It wasn't small things. The small things turned into big things, but it was only because the deep rooted beliefs that we had about how life is and how life should be kept bumping into each other.
Mm-hmm.
Things like just how a relationship should be. Just everyone has a different belief about how relationships should be,
Mm-hmm.
or how finances should be, and how finances should be run, or
Mm-hmm.
you should have a career, or if you should have a business, and your comfort level and your comfort for risk and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's use risk as an example. She grew up in a very risk averse household. Her dad
Mm-hmm.
was in the same job for 30 plus years, and she saw that, and he taught her to do the same thing. Get a job, stay in the job for a long time, let that be your safety net. I grew up in an entrepreneurial household, very high risk. Take risk, do what you need to do to grow the business, do what you need to do to save the business, do whatever is necessary. So we're on two very opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to risk.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved closer toward the center of the spectrum. But because we were moving away from our comfort level, we would start bumping heads against each other when it came to risk.
Mm.
We could never get close enough to the middle that we were both happy with where
Mm-hmm.
things were. You see what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's ultimately is those things started stacking up, those values that we were far enough away on, stacked up long enough
Mm-hmm.
that the next 10 years didn't seem like any better than the previous 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not us as bad people. It's not that either one of us did anything absurdly dumb. It's that we're both good people, but with not extremely, but with enough varying core beliefs
Mm-hmm.
that we couldn't have a synergistic marriage.
Mm-hmm. I get it. And now, 6 months is quite a short time, I would say, having gone through what you've gone through. And can you say you are off the ground, or you stay? I mean, through the
Mm,
challenges that you've been through, can you,
mm.
or you're still going through it, and you've got to still build yourself up
Uh,
mentally?
there's still there's still time. I mean, there's still times where I feel in indifferent, maybe is a way to say it, where it's just like, you know, just like thinking about how things were and thinking about where I am right now, even though I believe that the next 10 years is going to be prosperous. Like you said, I'm only 6 months really out of this, not out of anything really. I'm,
Mm,
I'm, I've been working through this for 6 to 9 months. So there's still times where it's like, where it feels just blah. And I have to recognize those times and not feel bad about them, because I believe it's a natural part of the journey that I'm going through.
mm-hmm,
Is there's still going to be the highs, and there's still going to be the lows, but I have to not let my lows be too low and not let my highs be too high.
mm-hmm,
I have to bring myself as close to the middle as possible, but make sure that my lows continue to come higher. And as long as I don't let myself dip down in the valley too hard, then I know that I'll be able to maneuver through it more effectively and quicker, if you will. Not that I'm worried about getting through it quickly, because I'm sure a year from now I'll still have those times where I look back at the divorce and closing the business and think about it and have a moment of clarity about it. But as long as I don't attach to that feeling, then I can stay in a less emotional state.
And now, even as you are looking back at this point, are there times that you look at the way things went and you say, I could have done better in this area or in this other area. I could have prevented one or the other. Are there times that you focus or you look back and see that and you say you see the areas that you could have improved or avoided?
Uh, 100%, a hundred
Mm-hmm,
percent. And actually, so my ex-wife and I, we just got together this past weekend and had a 4 hour conversation on, because we're still continuing to try and understand where we went wrong
mm-hmm,
with things and where we were not understanding each other, so that we could both go into the next season of life or the next relationship
mm-hmm,
and do better. So, one example of that for me is being stubborn and hard headed. That's me.
mm,
And so I'll be stubborn and hard headed sometimes to the point where it makes my life harder. But if it proves my point, then I'll go ahead and do it. Now, I've backed off of that because I've slowly learned that I'll do that. But until she told me that that's something that I will do, is that I'll be stubborn about something just for the sake of doing it, then I don't know any better. I don't know that until I hear that from somebody else. So um, all that I can do is look back on the things that I could have done different, like you said, and learn from them as best I can, so that the next time, both in business and relationship, I do better. I do as best I can. I'm still going to screw up. I'm still going to have downfalls. I'm still going to slip, but all that I can do is do better.
mm.
So that's going to be an ongoing process, and that's something that I hope that I continue to learn from moving forward. Is the things that I've done, the things that I didn't do well, that I can do better next time.
Yeah, now tell us what you think, or that aspect in your life now that you admire so much with the current situation, based on the toughness of your mental attitude. What is it that they say? If I was not as tough as I was right now, yes, there are some areas that you say this could have been done better, but then you look at where you're standing and you say that what my toughness, that's how my stand on my principles has done to me and brought me to this part.
One thing that I believe is that a lot of people live the lives of other people.
Mm-hmm.
They they will make decisions in their own lives based on what other people think and what other people judge of them.
Mm.
And so when you're making decisions to try and make other people happy, you will almost never be happy yourself.
Mm.
So in that, with the marriage, there was a long time where I questioned trying to start a separation because I didn't want to have to put her through the separation. I didn't want
Mm.
her to be hurt during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the long run, that would have not done paid off well because we probably would have continued to be unhappy and of maybe eventually be separated anyway. And it would have been worse further down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And with the business, it's very similar. If I would have convinced myself that, hey, if I close this business, it makes me a failure and everyone is going to judge me based on me being a failure and me closing a business, and I would have just kept going, maybe I just would have continued to be unhappy or things would have ended in a huge disaster. Who knows? So I think one thing that could help people in making decisions and making changes better is not worrying about the judgments of other people, doing your best to make decisions without looking at and thinking about and being concerned about what everyone else around you is going to say or think or do. Because all you can control is what you do, say, think, and feel. That's all what you as a person does and says and thinks and feels. You cannot control and have zero responsibility, not zero, but little responsibility over what other people do, say, think, and feel.
Mm.
So, learning to make decisions based on your judgment, your best judgment, of course, with the help of other people is very important as well, but with your best judgment so that you are happy, so that you are happy in this life is something that a lot of people would would bode well if they started to do that. Making decisions based on things that would make them happy. Not happy in a
Mm.
sense that like going and drinking and partying and that nonsense. Not that nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think would fulfill you in life instead of you trying to be a people pleaser and please everybody else?
Mm. Yeah, and that's what calls for mental toughness, for you to put yourself first. It's not selfish to put yourself first when you think that putting others first could be detrimental to your mental health. So put yourself first. Be tough.
Well, and that's a very good point. Is if you're not hurting my belief is that human beings are meant to help other people. That's my
Yeah.
belief is that human
Mm-hmm.
beings find will ultimately find fulfillment in self-transcendence and
Mm-hmm.
literally transcending yourself and helping other people. So this isn't about you being selfish
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, but it
Mm-hmm.
is about you being selfish. It's about you being selfish so you can be selfless,
Yeah.
so that you can then go give yourself to the world. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
not happy yourself, it doesn't matter how much you want to try to give yourself to everybody else. You're not going to be able to do it to your fullest because you're not happy here. And until you're happy here, the rest of the world's just going to see glossy you. They're not going to see the full you.
Mm. Wow, wow, wow. So this is now tell us, we've been talking about your mental toughness, and Jerry has told us so much. Now, before you go, I know there are people who are watching, and usually when people watch someone, they would want to follow up with them. How can you connect with the people? In what way would you like to connect with the people, and what ideas could you maybe share or something like that?
Yeah, so I am totally open to any kind of questions, anything like that, based off this
Mm-hmm.
conversation or any other struggle anybody's having in life. Like I said, my big belief is that most people lack the self worth and self confidence to be able to accomplish the things that they want in life. They
Mm-hmm.
just don't believe that they're worthy of doing it or worthy of it, and they don't have the confidence to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can start to shift those things, then who knows what you could actually accomplish. You can find me on pretty much all platforms. Instagram is the best one at Jerry Scarlato, but I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on TikTok, um, also on YouTube. So you can find me on most popular platforms. And like I said, if you send me a message, like it's worth starting to figure out what's the thing that's keeping you from moving forward. And until you start to ask questions, and like I said, find somebody who can give you some, who can find your blind spots, then there's a good chance you'll just stay stuck where you are. But you have to find your self worth, and you have to build self confidence along the way. Otherwise, it's a lot harder ride.
Mm. Thank you for that. We appreciate you sharing all that with us. Yes, and yeah, remember to connect with Jerry. Hop onto Instagram and look for Jerry Scalato and connect with him. And yeah, develop your mental toughness through asking questions and learning from him.
Mm.
Yeah, that's about it for today. We are coming to the end of today's show, and we really appreciate you coming to this show, Jerry.
Anthony, I appreciate you so much. Great conversation, and I appreciate your audience and everybody who's watching.
Leave us with something that we should always remember. I know you've said much, but then something that you would always, I mean, we should always remember.
I'm a person who thinks in quotes a lot of times. And one of my other favorite quotes is, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will dictate your life and you will call it fate. Unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will dictate your life and you will call it fate. So until you start to become aware of the things that are keeping you where you are, you'll say, well, this is just the way that it is, or this is just the way life was supposed to be.
Hmm.
But things can be different, but you have to start to become aware. You have to start to make them conscious. You literally have to start to develop more things. It's like peeling back an onion. You have to peel back one layer, and then you have to dig into that layer, and then you have to peel back the next layer, and then you have to peel back the next layer. And who
Hmm.
knows how many layers there are? But unless you start the process, you'll consider it fate, and you'll just stay where you are.
Hmm. Oh, don't leave it to fate. Be proactive. Do it. Peel that uh, one layer at a time, and enjoy your life. Thank you very much once again, Jerry, for that. I see, yeah, Moraya Mwangi saying great discussion. Thank you, Jerry, for sharing your experience. Very enlightening. Yes,
Appreciate you being here.
Yes, Moraya Mwangi has been with us, and I know many other people have been with us. We appreciate you taking your time and staying here with us. And yeah, that's about it for today. Thank you very much. And until next time. You've been listening to Now Tell Us, and me being your host, Anthony Morore, together with our wonderful guest today, Jerry Scalato. We are saying bye for now. Peace.